Yes, sir.
There you go. Perfect. Well, hey, first of all, thank you for taking the time and doing this. And I have to say that I've kind of known about you doing this carnivore stuff and some of the recent stuff for quite a while now. And I know there's a couple different topics we might want to get into, but for those, and I know you haven't been with us before, but I mean, there's a bunch of people in here, and more will probably pile in as this goes on. They may have some questions they may type in the chat, but everybody else is muted except for you and I, so we don't have a lot of kind of background noise and stuff like that. So if you don't mind, could you give us a little bit of your personal history, your background? Let's know who you are for the people that aren't aware of what who you are and what you've done.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks so much for having me. Honestly, you've been one of my biggest inspirations since I began my carnivore journey. So this is really exciting for me. My name is Michaelanthony. I am an artist and a voice actor and have been a carnivore for just about 4 years, a little over 4 years. I don't have an exact start date, but it's just been over 4 years. And I used to be another 70 pounds heavier. So I lost a lot of extra fat and I have to keep a list, but I don't, it's a hypothyroidism, clinical depression, pre-diabetes, um, and just so many things that I healed from with a carnivore diet. And I'm just so grateful every day. And ever since, I've just been obsessed with sharing my story with as many people as will listen, because I feel like this is the life-saving information that so many of us we're just around the corner from having, and just never ever got it for most of our lives, many of us. And I feel it's criminal that we're not able to just know this stuff when it's so natural and it works so well. So that's my story. I've just been doing a lot of social media over the past few years, trying to promote a healthy lifestyle. And more recently, um, I'm saying I boiled down my message to natural health and natural rights.
Yeah, and just listening to you talk, I can see why you're a voice actor. You've got a very sort of powerful, nice voice. Some people are not pleasant to listen to. I mean, some people argue that that's mine, but good for you. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been doing this now. I just passed my 5th year in December, so I'm into my 6th year now, and it's been something that we get a lot of naysayers saying, well, you have to have broccoli in your diet, you must eat spinach, or you must eat certain fruits and vegetables. And my question is, or what's going to happen? And, none of it has, to my knowledge, happened, at least not in my life, and to many other people. I do want to talk about, the last thing you talked about, natural freedom, because I think that's a very, very topical topic. It's always important, but I mean, it seems so even more now than ever. And there's been certainly a infringements upon that. At least many people feel that. Other people think, you're being silly when you talk about your right to medical autonomy and that type of stuff. So if you don't mind, let's get into that right now. And I know, I guess recently you were part of people that are trying to say, hey, look, I want to be not discriminated against for various reasons. And when we talk about the history of discrimination has happened to all different classes of people, whether it was African Americans in the United States, or people in the lower caste systems in India, and we see that around the world, and no one thinks it's a good idea. And now that has now become vaccine versus non-vaccine. And so I think I heard that you were maybe arrested at a restaurant or something like that. Can you let me just get your thoughts on this. I mean, what do you feel? I mean, because everybody has a right to their opinion. So let me hear your thoughts on freedom, if you don't mind.
Okay, it's pretty simple for me. It comes down to just, I guess, a principle that we are all born free. And so anything after that is something we've surrendered. If we surrender our rights, our freedoms, that's one thing. And sometimes we do that in order to kind of negotiate peace with others. We establish communities, we come up with rules and agree on certain things. And we won't kill each other, we won't steal from each other, stuff like that. But that's all stuff that can be done within the context of liberty. We can have liberty and also a sort of social contract. But it just all comes down to the fact that we are born free, and that's a principle that is enshrined in our Constitution, the United States Constitution. And to me, that's what America has always stood for. And I feel like we're losing that in a really very quickly, in a bizarre way, over just justifications that don't stack up. And nothing. My point is that no justification ever could stack up, because there is nothing that justifies giving up our fundamental freedoms. So I don't know if
Yeah,
that's
and
clear.
no, it is clear to me, and I'm completely on board with this. Even as a physician, you know, I don't care if I had something that was 100% safe and 100% effective, and nothing I ever did as a surgeon was that way. But even if it existed, you know, I would never force it upon someone. That is something that I think, you know, you still have a choice to make that decision. The counter argument to that, of course, is, well, your freedom ends where my health, you know, if it impacts my health negatively. And I think this is something that the science doesn't support that, despite, you know, we're hearing messages to the contrary. But I think if anybody looks at it, it doesn't seem to, all of the mandates, the attempted efforts have not made any difference. I mean, realistically, they, you know, when in the net scheme of things, you know, whether it may delay things or change the order of things that occur, but the overall effect has been the same no matter where you are in the world and what your policy is. We can look at that throughout the world. You are in New York. Is it correct you're in New York City or somewhere in that area? Is that
New,
correct? And that's
yes, new.
particularly, that is a particularly under de Blasio, and I don't know what Eric Adams is going to do, but I mean, what has the climate been like in New York for those? Because I live in, you know, I live in Washington State. I'm near Seattle, which is not as bad as New York probably, but potentially could get there. I'm fortunately in a more of a rural county where, I mean, people don't really care. I mean, they just, you know, you do whatever you want. I'm not at one point has anybody said anything to me about anything. And so it's been kind of mind your own business type thing, let you do your thing. But tell us about New York. What's New York like these days?
Yeah, New York is weird now. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. So I was born in New York City. Right now, I'm living in the suburbs, just at the edge of the city limits by Long Island. Oh, my cat just joined me. Sorry. Um, so, and it's since I'm really right by Long Island, I end up often, say, going to stores and other places that are not in the city limits. And so things might be a little looser around this area, but people still walk around in masks by themselves, walking down the street outside. It's bizarre or driving by themselves. And uh, I have to take the Long Island Railroad to get into the city. And sometimes the conductors will ask me to wear a mask, but usually they don't bother me. It's interesting. A lot of them, I think, know that this is crazy. And but some of them end up being kind of mask Karens or whatever you want to call them, and that can be very frustrating. But ultimately, no matter where you go, if you really just kind of like, I went to a supermarket the other day in this was Brooklyn, I believe, and they insisted that I wear a mask at the front door. The security guard in the front did not want me going to the store with it. I was buying cheese, which I probably shouldn't have, but um yeah, it was, I said, I'm just going to buy some cheese. And I think he called the manager or something on the radio, but then I went ahead and kept shopping without any problem. But it's just weird. Another store, I went to a little boutique pet store, and just to pick up a few supplies, they told me to wear a mask, and they didn't even negotiate with me. This little old lady turned me out of her shop, and it just felt so wrong. And that was a day that kind of reminded me that I probably have to relocate. I don't want to, but I've been seriously looking at relocating, probably to New Hampshire. But it breaks my heart because this has been my home my whole life, and I don't really want. And a lot of my friends and family are still here, of course. Some of them have moved, but it's not easy to look at leaving your lifelong home. I'm 38. I've traveled, I've around the world even, but uh, New York, it's a special place, and I will always love it, at least for what it has been. But I used to work for the Metropolitan Museum of Art in their security department, and now I can't even go to the museum. You know, the museum that I went to since I was a child with my dad. We'd go there with sketchbooks and find all this inspiration everywhere. And now we're not even, I'm not allowed. He's allowed to go, and I'm not. It's a weird world.
Yeah, I mean that discrimination is truly astounding. That we and the fact that a lot of people are supportive of that, to me, is really the astounding part. Um, do you feel that the new mayor is going to change any of the policies? Do you get the impression that he's going to do that? Or I mean, the weird thing about Eric Adams, he's a vegan too, which I have concerns about. He's going to try to make everybody plant-based. But do you think there's going to be a change in policy from what de Blasio had? Is that what the rumor is, or do we know yet?
No, it looks like he's going to, if anything, expand upon what de Blasio left us, which is a real tragedy. But and in fact, during one of our I am part of a protest group called New York Freedom Rally. They have a site, newyorkfreedomrally.org, and we were in front of Borough Hall in Brooklyn before Adams. He was already elected, but had not yet been sworn in, and we were just outside of his office chanting, "Where's Eric Adams? Where's Eric Adams?" And he actually came out smirking with a macchiato or something, and he was he said that he would speak to us. He said that you put together a small coalition of your leadership, and we will talk. We'll have an actual conversation. And that never happened. In fact, he sent a text message to one of our top people saying that well, not top, but you know, we're a team, but one of our I guess leading voices, and sent her a text saying that I will not meet with unvaccinated people, which, again, going back to this segregation, this new caste system of sorts. And I think that was for a Zoom meeting. Wouldn't even for a Zoom meeting, they did not want to have unvaccinated people in the same. What are we going to spread computer viruses? But anyway, I don't have any hope for Adams, to be honest, and I think that he's yeah, he's going to keep taking us down this road. As far as him being a vegan, a lot of people in the freedom movement in New York have noted that it's a kind of a he's changed. Like, he used to be very holistic in his approach. He was a health vegan, I guess, not an ethical. I don't know what his whole philosophy is, but he did it for health, and for whatever, you know, it helped them for whatever reason. I guess, you know, we have our various theories about how that would be, but and how sustainable that is. But he said it helped him to overcome some major health issues, and so a lot of people who have been following his story for a while are saying, "Well, this is strange. You were all for natural remedies before, and now here you are pushing big pharma down our throats." I mean, really doubling down on trying to get as close to mandatory vaccination as possible.
Yeah, that is, and it's kind of interesting because there's a number of vegans that feel the same way as I do about this freedom stuff. So it's been interesting to see. And, you know, you think about it, you know, ultimately, while we disagree on nutritional practices in many cases, at the same time, it's like, hey, let's get away from using so many pharmaceuticals to you know, deal with some of these issues. And to see that is kind of unfortunate. You know, as far as, I mean, we are seeing mass exoduses from New York, Illinois, and California, top three states where people are just running from. I mean, we see that by the hundreds of thousands, you know, and you know, in the net numbers, the people moving to those states is dropped off tremendously, enough to the point where we're going to see significant changes in, you know, the congressional districts. You're going to, you know, people are going to lose representation in New York and pick it up in Texas, Florida, you know, Carolinas, you know, Georgia, Arizona, so on and so forth, as the country is doing that now. Tell me about, so what was it called? New Yorkers for Freedom or something like that? You said with the group you're in, I can't remember the name of it, but What's the story on that group, and what's been going on, and have you had any successes so far?
A New York Freedom Rally is yeah, it's a I don't know how much I'd call it an organization, but it's a group of people. Yeah, we're a group of people who do organize events, and usually we've done, as the name suggests, rallies. I've been with them for almost a year. Just started with, I think it was in March of 2021, the Worldwide Rally for Freedom, which was organized out of Germany. It was just a one day, it just everybody at this time, come out and represent freedom. And so it was just a worldwide protest at the same time, or around the same time, on the same day. And it felt so powerful to do that. And I've just been doing, not just that we've had a few of those, but we've been doing uh, just a bunch of other rallies as well, including uh, a a couple of memorable marches over the Brooklyn Bridge, and one of those included a lot of fire department and police union members. And well, I'm just thinking about how, especially with the police union members, it felt really wrong later on when, months after that, we were arrested by the New York Police Department for trying to eat without masks or COVID passports. So yeah, the climate has changed so much. But sorry, I feel like I've gotten off track there a bit.
No, I mean, I think that's perfectly on track, quite honestly. And just to, if we think about, first of all, a lot of these people, you see people like, when I go to the grocery store here in town, I don't put a mask on. I'm like, I'm not going to play that nonsense. And no one, literally, no one has ever said anything. No one's even looked at me sideways. It may help that I'm 6'5" and 250 pounds, but, what I think is, and I see people in there, and some of them have it around their nose, off their nose. I'm like, just take the damn thing off. The only reason you're wearing it is so you don't get looked at funny. I mean, I think probably, I don't know what percentage, but probably a significant percentage of people only do that, not because they think it helps, but because they don't want to make a scene, or feel like they're uncomfortable, standing out. I think there's a lot of that going on, and probably the same thing with these restaurants or businesses are enforcing some of these vaccine passport, things that are going on. Are there restaurants or places that are openly defying these mandates? Are you seeing that? I know there's a few. So what's going on with those guys?
Yes, thankfully there are a bunch of places that are resisting. I wish it were more, but because still most places you go and you're gonna be asked to show your papers. But I think the Instagram account Pro Freedom Eats is the one to follow for some of these places. I think it might be New York centric, but regardless, um, yeah, it's a list of places, or at least the teachers' places, that are fighting back. But see, these places are all under threat of fines and escalating penalties. So the first one is a $1,000 fine, and then it goes up from there, either monetarily, or I don't know what they could do to people. Saying escalating penalties, it sounds like it could get pretty bad. So uh, they're risking everything just to treat people like human beings, which is crazy that it's not their choice, uh, according to the government at least, whether or not they can have a voluntary exchange with peaceful people who want to spend money at their establishment. It's bizarre. Um, and I got to say, something that keeps coming to mind, and I don't want to miss this point, it drives me nuts that the the health or the medical establishment that is pushing all of this, the big pharma push to turn everything into a product, something that can be uh, monetized instead of just letting us actually have true health. Uh, it drives me nuts that the same media who are constantly pushing for big pharma could have easily, just much, probably more easily, pushed for actual health by promoting just a good, healthy diet and lifestyle, which, of course, is something that the United States government, I'm constantly pointing out, is still recommending that we replace butter with vegetable oil. I mean, it's right there in the U.S. The dietary guidelines for Americans. It's, and that sets the tone for everything from school lunches to military rations to prison food. Anywhere you go. Oh, but also it sets the tone for the standard of medical practice. So doctors who contradict that and say, no, eat butter instead of vegetable oil, could, of course, get into trouble with for misinformation, or at the very least for as you've experienced, dealing with a corporate structure that only wants profit and does not want to offer actual solutions if those eat into the profits.
Yeah, I mean, my certainly concern is, as someone who promotes, lifestyle and diet, and obviously a diet that's controversial, is that we will also be silenced, just like we see with guys like Robert Malone and Peter McCullough and some of these guys who have been pushing back. These are very well-regarded scientists and physicians, at least previously. I mean, these people are, very well high into different corporations and academic centers. And so we're seeing the silencing of that, just like we saw in the 1930s with the scientists that did push back. You're seeing that happening. And so it's something that people that think that's not going on is, it's kind of a shame to see that the people are kind of turning a blind eye. And I mean, you've got a company like, for you guys that listen to Rogan stuff, and he's had these people on, it's been very controversial, but I think probably one of the more interesting ones I saw was John Abramson. He just came on, the other day, and he's talking about how the pharmaceutical industries operate and the degree of, immunity that they have from doing just about anything. I mean, they basically make up data, they lie, they manipulate the data to do what they want. And then occasionally when they get caught and they pay a fine, it's usually, a small price to pay relative to what profits they're making. So it's an enormously corrupted and harmful industry. And the doctors that are, that are saying, well, I'm following the science, don't even know how corrupt the science actually is, which is kind of a shame there. Tell me about, so what was the deal where, I mean, I don't know if it was true. Did you guys get arrested? What was the deal? What was the story? What went up to that? I mean, because I can't imagine the police. I mean, don't the police have something better to do than stand around and be the mask police or the vaccine police? I mean, you figure like NYPD has enough on their plate with traditional actual crime that they don't want to be, wasting their time telling people to wear a mask or whatever nonsense is. Well, tell me this, what was going on with this sort of arrest that you might have been involved with? Like, did it actually happen?
Oh, it happened. It happened. Bizarrely enough. And for the first, I've never been arrested in my life until this incident. Never had any legal trouble whatsoever. So I think I started telling the story earlier and ended up going off on a tangent. None of these are really tangents, but we were protesting in front of Borough Hall, and we're yelling at, Eric Adams and the incoming mayor. And eventually, we decided to go down the street, try to get something to eat. The Shake Shack locked the door because they saw us coming, and none of us had masks, and I guess they probably heard us yelling and all that stuff. But anyway, we went down the block to Burger King, and there was no security at the door. It's just a regular Burger King. You walk in, except of course it's New York City, so there's a huge barrier when you get in front of the registers, just the whole all sealed off, and so most of the staff was back there. A few of us started ordering. I didn't get to order, but So basically, the manager, I wasn't even able to hear what the manager was saying. He had a mask on. He's behind a barrier. There's a large group of people, so I wasn't right there to hear what he said. So I did not personally get told to leave this place by the manager. I didn't even get to try to order. So, but the police came after, I don't know, 10 minutes. They called the cops to remove us, and the police said that it was like 15 cops in there, and then more outside. and they said, you have been asked, or the manager doesn't want something like the manager would want you to leave, and if you do not leave, you will be arrested for trespassing. And then they started to kind of, it looked like they were guiding some people out and then arresting a few of us. Five of us got arrested that night, and five guys. And we were not at a Five Guys, obviously, but five of us were arrested. And um, it was just interesting to see how it happened. I mean, they were arresting a guy next to me, and they actually said, no, 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 get that guy. So I don't know if I was kind of, even though I'm a pretty quiet guy, I was saying things like, okay, please lead us out of the building. If you want us to leave, you lead us out. A lot of us were saying that, if you want us to leave, we'll leave if the police leave, and they wouldn't leave. So it just got really weird. And yeah, like I said, I was one of five guys that were arrested that night, and we were driven far away to a distant precinct, I think to keep us away from our friends who would have been rallying in larger numbers outside of the precinct if they had taken us there. Although there were still a bunch waiting for us when we got out of the jail about 5 hours later. So it took about 5 hours to get processed and everything. And it was interesting. In the precinct, no masks. The cops do not wear masks. They don't like masks. They know it's BS. So we're and it's of course crazy because the mask mandate is part of why we were there, for sure. So, but mostly it was I guess down to the forced vaccination thing, or the COVID papers. So, but then again, it wasn't very clear because I didn't speak to a manager. Basically, it came down to the manager seeing that we were not cooperating with the COVID mandates and then kicking us out. But well, I'll jump over to what's happening now. Right now, there are some court cases pending. The first round of because we've done this a few times. We did this at a cheesecake factory. Those charges were dismissed entirely. I was not arrested that night. But then the following night, I believe that it was at Applebee's that a few of us did get arrested again, and the charges were actually expanded. They were added to. So we don't really know what to expect out of all these arrests. Some of them may be dismissed. Others may get more complex as that second round was. And it's been a roller coaster because, again, I've never had legal trouble in my entire life. I'm a pretty quiet guy, an artist, and here I am, getting arrested for, as I say, having a face and protecting my private medical information or my medical privacy.
Yeah, I want to, and again, I just look at this, I think how ridiculous this all is, and it's more than ridiculous. I mean, it's actually, some people get harmed. Like you said, I've never had a criminal record. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I was in the military, all that stuff. But I think about it. I'm like, I'd be very inclined to say I'm not going to comply with this stuff. And unfortunately, there's places I can go. I don't go out of my way to do these things, and maybe I should, but I mean, it's something that, you think about it. It's like you've got somebody who is otherwise, and the same thing when you're saying the cops are not wearing masks in the precinct. So, when and obviously you're probably hungry by this point. I mean, I don't know if you got to eat.
I was fasting.
Okay, you were fasting. Well, I mean, that's, anyway, but so, I mean, they process you, they take 5 hours. I mean, do they stick you in a cell? I mean, they just bring you downtown and let you go? I mean, and what goes on after that? Do they say, okay, you need to be, show up at some appointed date for a trial or further, I mean, what goes on after that?
Yes. So we were in a cell in each, I believe in every case, we've been taken to a precinct and put in a cell in that precinct. So I guess even though we were in a cell. At least we weren't asked to wear masks. That was nice. And so it's just, yeah, we just were speaking with each other for most of that time. Of course, we didn't have cell phones or anything to and no, no reading material. We just had each other to talk to, and we had great conversations, including some. I was trying to introduce carnivores to some of the guys because they were asking me questions about my diet and lifestyle, and so that was really great to actually, And I'm hoping that some of the cops overheard the information, because they have vending machines in the precinct with all kinds of garbage. But the the process was mostly, yeah, sitting in the cell while one of us was being processed, and because the computers were so run down and everything, and I think there was a shift change in the middle of it. It just took forever. And at the end, we were all given a court date to come back in. I don't know how long, maybe a month from the date that we were arrested or less. And like I said, the first round of arrests, they got the charges were dismissed, but the second round, they had a mixed result kind of situation where they had some of them. Well, one of them took a deal that they just can't get arrested for the next 6 months, and then it's kind of like they're on probation, and others were offered this shorter, I guess, probationary periods, and it was. But like I said, there were more charges added to that, or at least one charge was added to that particular incident to everyone's charges. So yeah, that's what's happening now. That's what I was mentioning, that from between the arrest and now, it's in that now we're at the point where we're in. I think right now, some of my friends are at a courthouse in either Brooklyn or Queens, waiting to hear back about a few of us. And it was multiple nights. That's part of why I'm kind of mixing stories up, because it was that happened over the course of maybe 2 weeks, and I got arrested during the second week. So I don't know how much of the
What
story is missing there.
what do you think about the permanence of this? I mean, let's just assume that this pandemic fizzles out, which it most likely will, unless it's propped up by people that have an interest in continuing to sell drugs. But as the natural, we're seeing with this Omicron variant, I mean, we're seeing cases going up because it's kind of becoming like a cold, and deaths going down, hospitalizations largely relatively going down compared to the number of cases there are. Is there evidence? Are people talking about this is going to be, let's say spring 2022 and things fizzle out? Are they going to lift these restrictions and mandates? Are they going to say you need a vaccine for I mean, because right now, I mean, they're vaccinating against something that doesn't even exist anymore, to my mind. I mean, it's like taking the flu virus from 1976. I mean, it doesn't compute. I mean, you're not even dealing with the same situation anymore. Does that seem to be the case? Or are they going to say, hey, this is just for a temporary period of time? Now we've been told that, it's kind of like the checks in the mail type of, or whatever, you can, the dog ate my homework type of thing, the typical noble lie or whatever. But I mean, what is the thought about this?
Pardon. Yeah, I think it's hard. It's so hard to tell what's going to happen anymore, because I mean, I was hopeful many months ago that things were slowing down, and I've honestly, my concern is that as soon as this is over, if it ever really does, I mean, of course, some people are still going to be wearing masks so that they don't look like they're Republicans, which is absurd. But uh, eventually, they're going to pivot to a new one, a new way of controlling us. And I do believe that is going to be climate change. And many people agree that. And my concern, of course, is as a carnivore, when they pivot to climate change, or of course, they're already doing that. But when, if and when we are pressured to comply with the so-called experts' opinions on climate change, the way we're being pushed to, comply with all this stuff for the pandemic, then it's going to be really tough for carnivores for a while if people don't push back. I'm not sure how much people will push back, because I try to point out to them, and I don't think they really get it, that if you're giving up these rights now, the same logic can be used to control your diet. You know, how like your even honestly, when it comes to things like heart disease, they could claim that, well, you're going to be clogging up the hospitals. You know, the way they're trying to manage. It's bizarre. All the different justifications, like I've been saying, for this tyranny. But that's my real concern, is that no matter how permanent this whole COVID regime is, ultimately it's going to come down to climate change, and that'll be the new regime. And it might be tied in with the COVID passports, like in Israel, I think it's called the Green Pass, their COVID passport. So why are they calling it a green pass? Is it because, you know, you got the green, all clear to go? No, I think that eventually it could just be a coincidence. But regardless, we do know that there are a lot of international concerns and partnerships between governments and corporations to change society for good or ill, based on these ideas of sustainability and other issues that are really mismet. Any issues that we have with pollution and population, all these different things are ultimately because of these same people who are pushing their solutions on us. That it's their policies that have created these rundown cities and all this, all kinds of problems that would not exist. And of course, those are overblown in many cases, especially with, say, the amount of I'm sorry, the greenhouse gases that come from the animal agriculture industry, which amount to about 4%, according to their numbers from the EPA itself, the Environmental Protection Agency. They say that it's only about 4% of our total emissions, and yet cutting back on meat is going to, of course, you've covered this stuff, and many people who are really much more expert in this than I am have really made an amazing case for sustainable animal agriculture, which is, I think, healthier on many levels than any kind of plant agriculture. So I feel like I'm going on a bit, but did I answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I think it's just a good to talk about this as much as possible. I mean, obviously, I've been talking about this stuff for years, and you know, I'm well aware of the misrepresentation of how they play the greenhouse gas issue with animal agriculture. It's total nonsense, but you know, it's something that, you know, there is a corporate narrative, a profit narrative that they want to, and you know, I mean, obviously, I mean, I still talk to 99% of the people I talk to when I tell them. I mean, I was skiing the other day. I was getting a skiing lesson because I hadn't been in 30 years, and I was talking to the instructor had rheumatoid arthritis, and she said, you know, she was talking about her diet, and I said, well, you know, she was hungry because, you know, she's really hungry and was excited to eat her apple and some other, I can't remember what else she was having, but I said, well, you know, I'm good. I just had a steak for breakfast, and she knew I was a physician, and she said, well, as a doctor, I'm surprised you're, you know, eating red meat, and I kind of didn't go into it in detail, but I said, you know, it's basically nonsense and so on and so forth. But, you know, when it comes to the climate social credit scores or whatever we may or may not be facing, you know, the possibility is that, you know, when we allow these sort of intrusive, you know, I don't know if you want to call it tracking or whatever, but, you know, where they have access to a lot more of our information, what we're up to and what we're doing, it's very easy for them to say, oh, sorry, your cart has been declined because you've got too much meat in your cart. I mean, that is a realistic, and it's certainly implementable. It's not hard to do. I mean, you know, you've got a credit card and you go to the cash register and they see, you know, you've got, like you know, when I go to the store, I mean, I'm buying 40, 50 pounds of meat in so many cases, you know, that may not be possible, you know, and so we have to figure out how to prevent that. Obviously, the climate, even the, like if you look at guys like Michael Mann, who's one of the biggest climate change scientist guys out there, who's published all the hockey stick stuff and some of the gloom. Even he says cows are not the issue, but that doesn't matter. I mean, even if the science, even if the pro climate change science says yes, there is an anthropogenic rationale for change in climate, and we're going to have flooding and all this issues. Even if you believe that, the scientists that are pushing it the hardest seem to not say cows are doing it. But despite that, there is a huge corporate desire for us to stop eating meat. The EU, the European Union, has just sort of announced that they are going to be pushing for plant-based diets. I think that is very much conflicted by profit and who's going to make money on this stuff, and these people that are positioning themselves. Because if you're not eating meat, you're eating something else, and almost invariably, it's not going to be kale and lettuce and fruits and vegetables. It's going to be some sort of analog, whether it's Beyond Burger, Impossible Burger, or the 50 other companies that have sprung up trying to mimic that, or down the line, this lab-grown meat, which I think is ultimately going to prove to be financially non-viable, just because of the massive technical hurdles that require with processing bioreactors rather. So yeah, we're going to be fighting that battle, and it's you've already, what we're seeing is, this is what I've always said, we've grown too comfortable to fight. I mean, we don't have the incentive to fight. If I'm at home in a warm house with my Netflix TV and my junk food, and it's subsidized, and basically they're trying to subsidize that, I don't have much desire to do anything. Humans are unfortunately very much creatures of momentum and inertia, and we have a lot of inertia right now. People are fat, they're sick, they're tired, they're depressed. They don't want to fight. They just want somebody to give them something, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this massive, you want to call it brainwashing. When I go out in the community, and I look particularly at the young males that I see, it's very sad to me. I don't see very young males that look hungry. I mean, and I'm not saying starving, but I mean, they have that, they have this sort of soft appearance, and, they've become almost feminized in a way. Not that femininity in females is great, but I mean, you don't want a bunch of feminized males. I don't think it's good for society, and we're seeing that. And I don't know, and this is where some of this carnivore mission, if you guys have read my book, the epilogue, I literally, this is in 2019, before this pandemic, I said, look, meat is about freedom, ultimately. I mean, that was the last sort of thought I left in the book. And I think more so now than ever, and people are seeing this. Now, I think the good part, and I know I'm rambling a lot now, but I think the good part is a lot of people have woken up to this biosecurity state that we're developing, and they don't want that. And it's pretty easy to say, hey, look, the same things are happening in nutrition. And so maybe we'll have a large enough number of people, like particularly in the United States, where, gosh, 40% of the country or perhaps more are opposed to this nonsense. I think we're going to see that. And I think as it gets more and more absurd, hey, well, your first 2 doses don't seem to work very well. Let's get your 3rd dose. I mean, as in Israel, you mentioned the green, but now they're already on their fourth dose. Within a year. I mean, you're slamming people with four medications, which we don't have any long-term data on. It's just impossible to have that long-term data. Where has this impacted your career? This sort of, I mean, have you seen difficulties in working because of what's going on?
Well, I have been transitioning from full-time work for someone else to full-time work for myself. So I've been, I don't really have a real clear comparison, but definitely while I was working a full-time job at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, it was pretty tough to see. Okay, for one thing, I was working overnight and I had to wear a mask to patrol an empty building. I mean, it's super absurd. That was probably the thing that really haunts me the most, because just the complete lack of logic behind any of it. I would say that working long distance, I mean, I right now what I do is online, and I think it may have actually helped me in some ways that the world has become more of an, a telecommuting, um, yeah, kind of a world, because even though I think that it harms us in some ways because we're not as connected if we're just, on the internet, it does also allow for more opportunities to connect with people that you might not have ever met in a more direct way. So, I mean, it kind of balances out in some ways, but I'm concerned about this whole metaverse replacing reality. I mean, it all ties together, that we're here advocating natural health, a natural lifestyle, nature, and the world is completely being inverted in that regard, where everything's becoming a technology of some sort, a product of some sort, including people, it feels like. So um, I feel like I went off the topic again.
But it all rolls together, and I think one of the things like I've obviously been a nutritional pariah to some. I mean, some people think I'm crazy and nuts, and hey, how dare you promote meat? So I already have, particularly among the vegan communities, and there's actually been some vegans that have been very open-minded, which I think is great. But but then when I started saying, hey, look, I think the mask stuff. I was a surgeon. I wore a mask every single day of my career, and I know why I wore a mask. It wasn't to protect me from respiratory viruses. I guarantee that, not the type of mask I was wearing in the operating room. There's a very different reason for wearing those masks. And in fact, the data on mask and infection showed really no real benefit in the OR with regard to bacterial infections. And certainly we weren't worrying about viral infections. The very few times where I operated on like a TB patient where an N95 or something like that. But and when this pandemic first rolled out and back in, early 2020, I think, and they were talking about putting on bandanas and cloth masks, I just looked at it, I said, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I said that from the beginning. And, people pushed back on that. And now we've had studies, Bangladesh study shows these don't work. And then Leanna Wen, who's one of the CNN, I think Canadian, one of the CNN people that has been super, super pro lockdown and mandate and vaccine stuff, has now come out and said, yeah, the masks, the cloth masks are facial decoration, which, if you said that in 2020, like I did, you were considered a grandma killer or some nonsense, which, you're seeing the nonsense reveal itself. But what we're seeing is, because I've taken that stance, there's people that were in my sort of sphere of influence that were following me that says, I don't like your politics, ghost, and therefore I'm not going to listen to anything else you have to say, which is complete nonsense. You can certainly disagree with someone on another topic, but agree with them on, a different point. But, at the same point, I had somebody tell me the other day, because I put something about meat and, like I always do, and said, well, yeah, that's great. Stick to that. Stop talking about politics. And I just said, hey, look, I'll talk about whatever the F I want to, because I have more than one opinion and more than one thing that makes me who I am, like you do. I mean, we're not just defined by carnivore diet. I mean, I was a military guy. I'm a father. I'm an athlete. I was a surgeon. All those things influence what I think I feel comfortable talking about. Whether I'm comfortable or not, we all have the right to have that. Like I said, sunlight being the best disinfectant. If you're a crazy person that doesn't have any value, let them talk. I mean, they'll out themselves. But I think most people, are saying, look, this is about freedom and freedom of choice. And, what does the science actually show? Do we have long-term data on some of this stuff? No, of course we don't, because it's impossible to have. And I want to be, thoughtful and circumspect about what I'm doing to myself. One of the, and you alluded to the metaverse, and I do see that as a problem. And I think that's something that's going to be so incredibly enticing, particularly for people as they grow up, with cell phones in their hand, like my kids and the generation, what is it, Z now, that, I mean, they'll plug into this metaverse and you're not going to be able to compete with that. I mean, real world, for most people, particularly if you're unhealthy, you're obese and you're out of shape and you're depressed, hell yeah, I'm just going to sit there in the metaverse where I can be a superhero and I can do whatever I want to do. And so we're going to lose more and more people with this, I think. I mean, you know, not everybody's going to do that. I mean, I certainly am not. I mean, but, you know, that's going to be an issue. And many people welcome it. They welcome the fact that they can, because life is tough. And that's what, I mean, that's what life is. I mean, life is a struggle. It's tough, and you know, some things suck. But at the same time, other things are wonderful and beautiful and joyful. And we, you know, that's what being alive is about. But
That's nature.
I mean, yeah, that's nature. And you know, if you look at, you know, we talk about freedom. You know, I mean, ultimately, humans are animals. I mean, we're very intelligent, and you know, we have some higher cognitive functions. But my dogs, they don't have any concept of freedom or not freedom. It's just they exist and they do what they want to do. You know, and sometimes I yell at them for straying and running, and I got to drag them back in the house or something like that. But I mean, you know, most wild animals, they don't have concept of ownership or boundaries. I mean, there's territorial things that occur, sure. So that comes into play. But I mean, you talk about social contracts and stuff like that. And I don't know if we're at a point where we're redefining social contracts to where I must concede bodily autonomy for the greater good, which well, people are making that argument. And you know, you see where if you concede at one time, you know, where does it stop type of thing, you know, and does anyone, you know, are you seeing people that were previously pro greater good, whether it's mass or vaccines, switching sides? I mean, this has become so politicized. I mean, it's silly. I mean, it really is to think about that. But are you, you know, like I said, one thing I'm very happy to see is, you know, vegans. I've got a lot of vegans that follow me now because of a more pro-freedom stance that I've taken, and they say, "Hey, I disagree with you on diet, but I can come to terms and agree with this particular stance." Are you seeing people that were once pro-lockdown, pro-mandate coming across and joining you guys?
I don't know how big a turnaround we're getting, but I know that I've met people in the movement that used to be more in the liberty movement in New York City that used to be a little more left-leaning, and that tends to mean that they were more pro-lockdown and more all this stuff, you know, the thing is, you bring up the idea of sacrifice, and a lot of people are, what worries me is that people are willing to make sacrifices that they consider noble. I mean, as long as they don't have to die for it, usually they're willing to make a certain amount of sacrifice, excuse me, making certain sacrifices in order to benefit the whole. But I'm just thinking back to this conversation I had with someone on the way to a protest in Albany the other day, that she was saying that she hears good things about eating meat, but that she just can't do it for ethical reasons. And that's kind of what's happening with the anyone who thinks that meat is bad for the environment. They'll say, okay, it's really good that it was so good for your health, but actually a friend of mine said, but aren't you worried about the environment? It actually happened. I was counting down to the day that I would finally have a friend ask me how my carnivore diet might affect the environment. And so I'm just thinking about how people are, I think, more likely to comply because they think they're doing the right thing, and that could expand into, like I said, any anti-meat kind of thing, where people could start to get as crazy about the meat divide as they are about the mask divide or the vaccine divide. So that's one of my concerns. And I don't think I see people changing that much. So I don't know how much to expect.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to comment on is I think when, I have looked at this issue over and over again, and it's not simple. It's not clear cut. It's nuanced. There's a lot of, caveats that you have to talk about. But what we see is people have been bludgeoned to death with this one message, through the media over and over and over again. And that's what they tend to believe. I think when we hear about the truth, I mean, I've said the truth is whoever has the biggest megaphone. I mean, whoever has the biggest microphone, that is the truth. Whatever you hear the most, you're more inclined to believe. And it doesn't matter how many studies you produce that are in contrast to that, or even direct observation in many cases. Although I do think, when it comes to health, it's getting pretty hard to deny the fact that people eating meat-based diets are getting healthier. I mean, and obviously I'm one of the biggest proponents around for that, and I continue to, convert people, I guess, if you want to use almost a religious term. But I'm just saying, look, how do you deny that? And more people are we're seeing this growing. And, when I talked to Gary Fettke a couple of years ago, we talked about what does it take to change a direction. And, he claims it's 3% of the population. So if you can get 3% of the population that believe that, obviously most people are omnivorous. Most people do eat meat. It's still, vegan population still remains 1-2%. It never grows, it kind of waxes and wanes, but it never grows significantly, even though all the hype and hoopla that's out there, people don't want to give up meat. But to get people to say it's actually healthy and good for me, and I can eat a meat-based diet, which many people would love to do because it's freaking delicious and it feels good, that change and shift, is going to take a lot of time and effort and work. But if we can get to that 3%, maybe that's what it takes. I don't know where we're at now. We're certainly into the tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of people that are aware of a carnivore diet and supportive of it, and many of them have done it themselves. But that's still, you're looking at least 3 or 4 million in the U.S. alone, which is we're still not there yet. But anyway, we are at an hour, and I'll give you, if there's anything else you want to share, about information, what we need to know about, I would welcome that. If not, then if you just let people know where to find you, because I think there's a lot of people that feel like you do. And I applaud you for willing to get up there and stand up in a rally and allow yourself to be arrested. That takes a lot of courage that a lot of us may not have. And hats off to you for doing that. That's really something that's tough.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you. So I really appreciate all of that, Dr. Baker. Like I said, you've been one of my top inspirations ever since I started as a carnivore 4 years ago. And to see you on the right side of history means the world to me. My links are all up at themeatofit.com, the meat of it, which is obvious. I was surprised it was available, but I just want to encourage everyone to just do what you can to stand up for your rights, however you can, and know that in doing so, you're standing up for everyone's rights. And the same rights that allow us to choose what happens to our body during the pandemic are the same rights that are going to allow us to continue to choose what we eat as carnivores, vegans, whatever we are. The same rights, that is the right to choose what happens to your body. And we just can't negotiate with that ever. So and I appreciate having the chance to talk about this with you, especially since I see them as inextricable. These things are so tied together, whether it's health freedom and freedom in general. I try to stop using these specific terms and just promote freedom, because that underlying principle, that solves everything, in my opinion.
Amen to that. Thank you very much. Anyway, keep doing what you're doing. Maybe we'll get you back on down the road if you're open to that, and see how things continue to progress.
That'd be great.
Thank you for doing what you're doing. You guys have a great day. I will not be here. I've got to fly to Sacramento this afternoon. I'm going to go do some stuff with Mark Bell and Stan Efferding and go probably get crushed. But anyway, see you guys later. Anyway, thanks everybody. Have a great one. Bye-bye now.
Join Revero.health for a 30-day free trial to get access to live Q&A with VIP guests, social community meetings, member discounts, low-carb healthcare providers list, forum, workouts, monthly challenges, early access to podcasts, recipes, carnivore diet guide, fasting guide, shred guide, and much more.